a composer so obsessed with rhythm that it killed him. This week on The Internet Says It's True. Welcome back to The Internet Says It's True, where every week we learn something that sounds made up but is really true, part of the WCBE podcast experience. My name's Michael Kent. Welcome back. This is episode 265. We've got a brand new episode for you, and I had an awesome guest lined up, but they had to cancel it last minute, so my apologies for that, but this is still an outstanding story that I think you will enjoy. It's mid-November, so we're getting close to the holidays. It's time to buy those holiday gifts. You know what's coming. My new book, The Internet Says It's True, Stories That Sound Made Up But Aren't. It is the perfect gift. Why wouldn't you give someone a collection of more than 50 of the craziest true tales from history? Give the gift of knowledge this holiday season. That book is available in the show notes or wherever you buy books. Also, don't forget we have merch on our website. So when your loved one asks you what you want for a gift this year, you tell them you want a Tizzit mug or a Tizzit shirt. You can find those by going to our site, theinternetsaysitstrue.com, clicking merch. Also, please don't forget to rate and review the podcast. You can do that on the Apple Podcasts app. Just search for this show if you're not there already. And when you scroll down, there's a place to give a 5-star rating and a review with a few words. I don't know why, but when you add words to your review, it gives it more weight in the algorithm. So even if you just, make up some nonsense word, man, person, camera, woman, TV, just write that in there along with your 5-star review. Helps us a ton. Today's story is all about a French musician from the 1600s, Jean-Baptiste Lully, but more specifically, how he died. Before we talk about Lully's bizarre death, let's take a little side road into the world of conducting. Because conducting wasn't always what it is now. When we picture a conductor of an orchestra, we imagine someone on a podium waving a small baton, guiding an orchestra with elegant gestures. But that didn't really become standard until the early 19th century. In Lully's day, the 1600s, things looked and sounded very different. Orchestras were smaller, maybe 15 to 30 musicians, and rhythm was often kept by someone playing the harpsichord or violin. In France, though, things were more theatrical. Instead of conducting from the keyboard, leaders like Lully used what was called a bâton de direction, a long, heavy staff that they'd literally pound on the floor to keep time. Imagine that thud, 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 echoing through a Baroque theater as dancers and singers kept time to the pulse. It wasn't graceful, it was loud, physical. It was conducting as percussion. This was especially true in France's royal court, where precision and spectacle were everything. Louis XIV's palace wasn't just a political hub, it was the center of European entertainment, and Jean-Baptiste Lully was the man responsible for the soundtrack. He didn't start out that way, though. Lully was born Giovanni Battista Lully in Florence, Italy in 1632. He was the son of a miller. His beginnings were humble, and there was nothing to suggest that he'd one day dominate French music. But he had two things working for him: talent and charm. At some point in his teens, he caught the attention of a noble family, the Chevalier de Guise. You know me in French pronunciations, Guise, Guise, who brought him to France in 1646 as a language tutor for their niece. Lully quickly absorbed the French language, its customs, and crucially, its opportunities. He wasn't content being a servant, he wanted to climb, and the ladder led straight to the Sun King himself. By the 1650s, the court of Louis XIV was obsessed with ballet. The king loved to dance, he even performed on stage in elaborate productions where he'd play mythological characters, often symbolizing the sun. Lully, who was an accomplished dancer and violinist, got himself involved in these productions, composing and performing in court ballets. He appeared alongside the king in Le Ballet de la Nuit in 1653, and that performance changed everything. Louis XIV adored him. The two became close collaborators, even friends. Louis made Lully his official court composer, giving him titles like Compositeur de la Musique Instrumentale des Rois. That's composer of musical instrumentation of, I don't speak French. And later, Surintendant de la Musique. It's worth pausing here to understand what that meant. Lully didn't just write music for the king. He controlled music in France. He managed the royal orchestra, oversaw musical performances, and through a royal monopoly became one of the most powerful cultural figures in Europe. If you wanted to perform opera in France, you needed Lully's permission. He also changed the sound of French music. At the time, Italian opera was the gold standard, long, ornate, full of vocal fireworks. Lully fused that style with French language, poetry, and dance to create something new, the tragédie lyrique, a uniquely French form of opera. It was dramatic, but also stately, full of dances and choruses that flattered the grandeur of the monarchy. He invented the French overture, slow and regal at first, then lively and rhythmic, that composers like Handel and Bach would later imitate. So by the 1680s, Lully was living the dream. He'd risen from a Florentine servant to the musical director of Versailles. He was wealthy, arrogant, and adored, though also feared. He was known to be ruthless with rivals, manipulative, and vain. He was a perfectionist, which brings us to January 1687, when that perfectionism literally became his undoing. That winter, Lully decided to conduct a performance of his Te Deum, a grand hymn of thanksgiving he'd written years earlier to celebrate the king's recovery from illness. The occasion this time, a celebration for Louis XIV's recent recovery from surgery. It was a huge, elaborate production, over 100 musicians, chorus, soloists, and dancers. And if that surgery sounds familiar, congratulations, you're an avid Tisitor. We did an episode about the Limping Ladies of London and told you about this specific surgery. I shouldn't, but I'll tell you about it. Louis had an anal fistula. And when his doctor successfully created a method for fixing it, other men also started getting that same surgery, but not because they needed it. They got it unnecessarily because the king did, so they thought getting the surgery gave them some sort of status. We've gotten off track. This was about the congratulations, your anal fistula surgery was a success party with over 100 musicians, and our man Lully, as always, was in charge. But remember that old French conducting style, the one where the conductor slammed a long staff on the floor to keep time? Lully was doing that even though he didn't need to. He was an animated conductor, almost theatrical, and during this Te Deum, he was pounding the floor vigorously. At some point during the performance, he missed the floor and struck his own foot. Now, here accounts differ. Some say it pierced his big toe, others say it crushed the bone. Either way, it drew blood. In the 1600s, this was not a trivial injury. Doctors didn't know about bacteria, antibiotics, or antiseptics. Even a small wound could lead to infection. Lully didn't take it seriously at first. He may have continued conducting, even finished the performance. But within days, the wound became inflamed, then gangrenous. His doctors urged him to amputate the leg, which was a common, though dangerous, procedure, but Lully refused. According to one account, he said he'd rather die than lose the ability to dance. And that's exactly what happened. Over the next few weeks, the infection spread up his leg, and on March 22, 1687, Jean-Baptiste Lully died in Paris at the age of 54. Now let's pause for a second, because this is one of those moments where history becomes almost too poetic. The man who literally defined rhythm for a generation of French musicians, the man who kept time for the court, was killed by his own beating stick. After the break, we'll look at what happened in the aftermath of Lully's death, how his musical empire crumbled, what happened to the conducting after his accident, and how a man who controlled all of French opera became a cautionary tale for musicians. Stick around. If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent. There was a time that humans used 100% organic products as healing balms and moisturizers for their skin. Well, I've partnered with an awesome company that wants to get back to those times. Fatco sells organic and responsibly made tallow-based skincare products. For centuries, humans used tallow in skin moisturizers and healing balms, but Unfortunately, the topical application of these fats seemed to stop around the same time that animal fats stopped being considered part of a healthy diet. A lot of modern skincare products do more harm than good by stripping your skin of its natural oils. Let's change that. You can try them out now at fatco.com and get 15% off your order by using my promo code INTERNET. Go to theinternetsaysitstrue.com/deals for the link.
We're living through the most dynamic time in human history, and what we do as leaders matter. We are the ones that create the leverage to shift directions of our companies, our nonprofits, and our communities. As a leader or an emerging leader, please join me for a dynamic conversation with top thought leaders, academics, and executives to learn more about how to elevate your leadership. I'm Maureen Metcalf. Join us at the WCBE podcast experience at wcbe.org.
What if your kid could open a box and step into another century? With History Unboxed, they can. Each month, a new time-traveling adventure arrives at your doorstep, packed with hands-on projects, stories, recipes, and learning has never been more fun. No screens, no boring textbooks, just immersive, age-appropriate fun that makes history stick. Whether they're mummifying an apple like an Egyptian, or crafting medieval armor, or exploring the music of the Harlem Renaissance, they're not just learning about history, they're living it. Used by families, homeschoolers, and educators across the country, History Unboxed makes the past come alive with every box. I think it's amazing that I'm personally in my 40s and I'm still learning history every week. I wasn't interested in history as a kid, and I think that's because I didn't have something that made it fun. Things have changed since then. History Unboxed makes learning history engaging, fun, and hands-on in the comfort of your own home. So if your child loves to ask why and what was it like, this is the perfect way to fuel that curiosity. Ready to time travel? Sign up today by clicking the deals link in the show notes.
Hey, I'm Cliff Baumgardner.
And I'm Harrison Stewart.
If you're like us, you probably grew up watching the Discovery Channel classic, Mythbusters.
From rocket cars to chicken cannons, Mythbusters proved there's no question too big, too small, or too ridiculous to put to the test.
Now we're going back to rewatch the show from episode 1, and we want you to follow along. Join us as we revisit every single myth, moment, experiment, and explosion from throughout the show's legendary 14 seasons. Subscribe now so you don't miss one.
I'm John DeSando, host of Back Talk. This podcast is an extension of the long-running, award-winning movie review show, It's Movie Time. Back Talk features additional content and banter with guests about new movies. If you want more insight and information about what's playing now in theaters and online, find Back Talk at the WCBE Podcast Experience on WCBE.org. You'll be happy you did.
Welcome back. Let's pick up where we left off, with the Baroque composer Jean-Baptiste Lully dead from gangrene, leaving behind a legacy that was as grand as it was complicated. Lully's death shocked the French court. Here was the man who had practically invented French opera, gone at the height of his fame. But as soon as he was gone, the knives came out. Figuratively this time. For years, he'd made enemies among other musicians and courtiers by enforcing his royal monopoly. He had sued or intimidated anyone who tried to stage operas without his approval. So when the Sun King's composer fell to a self-inflicted wound, more than a few people quietly enjoyed the irony. His body was buried at the Church of Notre-Dame des Victoires in Paris, but his musical empire didn't last long. His monopoly on opera lapsed, and his collaborators began working with other composers. Within a decade, the public taste was shifting toward new voices, most notably Jean-Philippe Rameau. Lully's operas remained admired for their craftsmanship, but his dominance was over. Still, his influence was everywhere. Lully's innovation shaped how orchestras were organized, how rhythm was notated, and how dancers and singers coordinated with instrumentalists. His French overture became a template for composers across Europe. Bach used it. Handel used it. Even centuries later, you can hear its DNA in symphonic and theatrical works. But perhaps the strangest part of his legacy was what his death changed in the art of conducting. After Lully's accident, conductors across Europe began rethinking the use of the heavy floor-beating staff. The long baton gradually evolved into a lighter wand held in the air, safer, more expressive, and much less likely to cause gangrene. It wasn't immediate, but over time, the Lully incident became a cautionary tale for orchestra leaders. Conduct with grace, not force. If you think about it, there's something poetic about that too. Lully's death helped push music toward the kind of conducting we know today, batons that float like extensions of the arm rather than crash against the floor like weapons. Of course, it's easy to romanticize this story, but we should remember that in Lully's lifetime, medical treatment was brutal. The choice to amputate a leg wasn't a simple decision. It meant almost certain death from infection or blood loss. Refusing the surgery might not have been pure vanity. It could have been fear or simply denial. Still, the legend stuck. Lully was the man who refused to give up dancing, and it killed him. Let's zoom out for a minute, because Lully's story isn't just about one accident. It's a window into how the arts and politics were entwined under Louis XIV. The king used art and propaganda. His sun-king image was cultivated through dance, architecture, and music. Lully's operas weren't just entertainment. They were expressions of royal power. When Louis danced, the court watched, and the message was clear. The king was harmony itself. Lully's compositions mirrored that order. His music was disciplined and symmetrical and regal. It reinforced the idea that the king was the center of the universe. So when Lully died, some people saw it as almost symbolic, like the Sun King's own rhythm had been broken. And speaking of rhythm, let's visit that infamous Te Deum. The piece itself is a triumphant hymn meant to glorify God and by extension, the king. It had been performed for royal occasions before, like weddings and victories, surgery recoveries. The irony of dying while conducting it, celebrating the king's survival from surgery, was not lost on anyone. Lully's death became kind of a dark joke in musical circles. Later, composers would recount it with disbelief, as though it were a parable about pride and excess. Over time, it took on mythic qualities. Some versions embellished the story with lurid detail, claiming he impaled himself through the foot or that he continued conducting as blood pooled on the floor. There's no proof of that, but the reality is already strange enough. There are even apocryphal tales that Lully's family tried to cover up the true cause of death to preserve his dignity, but contemporary letters confirm the gangrene story. French chroniclers of the time described his refusal of treatment and his deteriorating health in the weeks before March 22nd. It's easy to reduce Lully to a punchline, the guy who killed himself with his baton, but his story is bigger than that. He was a visionary who built the foundation of French opera, revolutionizing orchestral playing and training generations of musicians. His tragedies lyriques like Armide and Atis, don't know if I'm saying those right, but they're still performed today. If not for him, we might not have the same concept of an orchestra or conductor at all. And that's what I love about stories like this. They start with this strange, almost unbelievable detail, a man stabbing his foot while conducting, and open up into a portrait of an entire era. The grand courts of Europe, the obsession with spectacle, the clash of art and ego. When we look back on Jean-Baptiste Lully's life, we see the contradictions of the Baroque age. Extravagance and precision, devotion and vanity, a belief that art could make a king divine and that the artist, standing close to that divine light, might borrow some of the glory. In the end, Lully's story isn't just about death by staff, it's about what happens when passion, pride, and power intertwine. He lived his life in rhythm, dancing, composing, conducting, and he died the same way, keeping time. The internet says it's true. Well, as I mentioned, there's not going to be a yap session this week because our guest had life get in the way at the last minute. So I didn't want to pass the quiz this week. So let's do the quiz with you. We've done this a few times before, and what I'll do is just allow you to use the honor system, and we'll still go through the questions that I prepared. And if you'd like, this makes this fun, send me your answer to number 5. That's our open-ended question. I want to see what you think. I want to hear what my listeners think about that last question as if you were on the show. But for our first 4, we'll go through them like normal. I'll even pull out a joke for you. So for question 1, we're going to play for a joke. If you get it wrong, I'll tell you a joke. If you get it right, I'll tell you a joke, because I don't know what you're doing over there. You might not even be playing along. You might just have this, playing while you're sleeping. Hopefully not behind the wheel. Here we go. Question number 1. Which instrument is not a part of a standard modern string quartet? A, violin, B, viola, C, harpsichord? I'll give you a couple seconds. Once again, one of these is not a part of a standard modern string quartet. Viola, violin, harpsichord. The answer, harpsichord. If you said harpsichord, you were right. A standard string quartet comprises 2 violins, 1 viola, 1 cello. A harpsichord is not part of that ensemble, but harpsichord, as we mentioned in the episode, very popular with the Baroque style of music. Okay, here's your joke. I'm just going to open the Milton Berle, Uncle Milty's private joke file to a random page, and this is about gentlemen. In England, a guy who doesn't do anything is called a gentleman. Here, we call him a bum. I don't get it, so we're going to turn to a new page. Let's look at this one. This is about neighborhoods. One couple was married 3 times. The town was so small they kept getting introduced. Horrible jokes. Let's find a good one. Here we go. 2 men were drinking when one of them fell back from the bar and landed in a dead faint. The other drunk said, "That's one thing about you, Irv. You sure know when to quit." All right, I'm giving up on jokes. They're all bad. Every once in a while we get a good one, but they can't all be winners. Let's move on to question 2. Which period in music follows the Baroque era? A, classical, B, romantic, or C, Renaissance? This is the one that follows the Baroque era. So Baroque, then classical, romantic, or Renaissance. The answer is classical. The sequence goes Baroque, that would be from around 1600 to 1750, then classical, which would go 1750 to 1820, then romantic, 1820 to 1910. And then, of course, you know the next one, and that would be dubstep, which went from 2010 to 2014. Let's move on to question 3. This one's for a sticker. If you get it right, we're going to use the honor system. Let me know. I'll send you a sticker. Which Baroque composer is known for the Brandenburg Concertos? Would it be A, Antonio Vivaldi, B, Johann Sebastian Bach, or C, Henry Purcell? Vivaldi, Bach, or Purcell? Which one is known for the Brandenburg Concertos? The answer, Bach. Johann Sebastian Bach composed the 6 Brandenburg Concertos. This was in 1721 as a gift to Christian Ludwig, Margrave of Brandenburg. If you got that one right, let me know. I'll send you a sticker in the mail. For question 4, I normally, with my guests, have been, giving away a copy of my new book. I can't do that right now because y'all would say, "I got it right, give me a book." And it's just, I don't have that many books. So if we're going to play for your pride, what is the term for highly ornamented musical lines typical of the Baroque style? One of these is the term for highly ornamented musical lines that would be typical of Baroque. A, minimalism, B, florid style, or C, polytonality. The answer, B, florid style. Baroque music frequently features elaborate ornamentation such as trills, turns, and rapid decorative passages. So, no book, but pride. And here's the one I really want to hear from you on. So send me an email, send me a social media thing, do something to let me know your answer to this. Here it is. If your life had theme music, as a cue that played when you walked into a room, what would it be and why? I want to know what your personal theme music would be when you walk in a room. I can tell you mine because it already happens. It's probably 24 Karat Magic by Bruno Mars, because that's my walk-on music, and when I walk into a room to take the stage, that's what's playing. So that's all for this week. Thank you all so much for listening to the show. I appreciate that. Here is a kid whose dad always told him, if it ain't Baroque, I'm not going to do the pun. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it. See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make this show possible. Sean Brown, Joshua Endress, Dallas Ray, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Jim and Joanne Martin, Mitch and Andrew Joseph Kemplin, and the show's official Emperor, Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and all audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.